Good morning, students. Today we are gonna learn a new chapter from your book, The Flamingo. This chapter is both for CBSE as well as the council students, and this is called as the Indigo. Okay, so let's quickly move ahead. Let's see what is in this chapter. First, we'll start with the author of the prose. Author of the prose, the Indigo, is Louis Fisher. He is the author, and he is the famous person who is renowned all over the world for writing the life of Mahatma Gandhi, which was later made to an award-winning Academy Award-winning movie called The Gandhi. You have watched it, I think so. If you hadn't, you should watch. It's an excellent piece of art and you should go through it. It has beautifully captured the life of Gandhi, and this is something for everyone to see it. So we will deal with the author first. The Louis Fisher. He was born on 29th February 1896 and died on 15th of January 1970. He was an American journalist. Among his works were a contribution to the ex-communist treatise The God That Failed, written in 1949, A Life of Mahatma Gandhi, written in 1950, basis for the Academy Award-winning film Gandhi, which was released in the year 1982, as well as A Life of Lenin, which won the 1965 National Book Award in History and Biography. Louis Fisher met Gandhi in 1942 at his ashram in Sevagram in central India. Gandhi told him the story behind what made him seek the departure of the British from India. Louis Fisher met only once. He knew Gandhi better than any foreign correspondent. He stayed in Wardha for a week in June 1942 and met Gandhi twice a day at his hut. No electricity in Sevagram. A comprehensive account of the Gandhi Fisher encounter is given in A Week with Gandhi. So this person, Louis Fisher, the author, he had written countless books on Gandhiji, and he was acquainted with Gandhiji and had known him very well, other than any authors who came under his shadow and wrote a beautiful piece of art, beautiful piece of literature on his life. So this was all about the author Louis Fisher. We'll move on to the actual background of the story, the Indigo. Now this Indigo is a part, you can see, is an excerpt from Louis Fisher, Life of Mahatma Gandhi, the life of Mahatma Gandhi, and it is based on a real life account. All the characters in this story are real people, and they were one of the eminent freedom fighters of India. We will first study the background of the story, and this will help you to understand the entire thing. Now, what is the background of the story? The story of Champaran Satyagraha, India's first civil disobedience movement. If you go back to your days where you were taught history, and if you had given your attention to the subject, you all know what was the civil disobedience movement. It was started by Mahatma Gandhi, and it was a part of India's freedom struggle. So this story revolves around the Champaran Satyagraha, the Champaran Satyagraha, where it was India's first civil disobedience movement, erupted in the year 1917. Okay, so we will continue in search of the background of the story. 100 years ago, on a day very much like this, Mohandas Gandhi travelled in a train with no AC to reach Champaran to hold India's first civil disobedience movement. Under the British rule, many farmers in the Champaran districts of Bihar were forced to grow indigo in their lands, much to their dismay. So, this story revolves around the indigo farmers. You people have all heard of the indigo farmers. This was what led to the Champaran Satyagraha movement, and this place Champaran, it is in Bihar, in erstwhile Bihar, and this area was chosen by the British Raj to cultivate indigo, and people were forced to cultivate this indigo because this was sent outside as a cash crop, and the farmers were deprived from their own rights. Gandhiji fought for these farmers, and how he actually succeeded is all about this Champaran Satyagraha, and this is all about this prose itself. Okay. To fight this, a money lender named Raj Kumar Shukla reached out to Gandhiji and requested him to come and help them. As Gandhi wrote in his autobiography, he did not even know of Champaran before this. Nonetheless, he came down to the district on April 10 of 1917 with a band of lawyers including Dr. Rajendra Prasad to fight it out with the British. Okay, there has been the Indigo riot in 1859 to 60, but this was a new struggle altogether. Preparations began. Gandhi and his lawyers traveled across the districts to different villages, meeting farmers and taking note of their sufferings and complaints against the forced indigo cultivation. Ever since Gandhi arrived in Champaran, the British rulers started keeping a close eye on his moves. Finally, on April 15th, he was given an ultimatum at Motihari by the commissioner to leave Champaran. Okay, to the to that, Gandhi responded that he wouldn't leave but was ready to bear the penalty of civil disobedience. It was apparent now that Gandhi would be taken to jail for this resistance. As a response, scores of Champaran tenants turned up in protest outside the jail, police stations, and courts. In the end, troubled by this unusual form of resistance that spilled no violence, the government was forced to let go of Gandhi. The country thus had its first direct object lesson in civil disobedience, Gandhi wrote in his autobiography. The struggle against forced indigo cultivation continued. Now, however, the possibility of Gandhi's arrest was more imminent. So, this was the first issue that actually accumulated all the Indian tenants, all these Indian farmers together, and for the very first time, they raised their voice against the British Raj. This was only for Gandhiji because he stood firm on his feet and he stood firm on the ground and he took a proper stand for the farmers, these poor deprived farmers, and he taught the people of Champaran how to fight directly against the system, directly protest against the state, protest against the government, and this was the first civil disobedience movement by the people of India. But he put together a plan. A chain of people who would take over the work if he or anyone after him was arrested. This way the struggle would go on with or without him. The struggle went on, the civil disobedience continued. The protest and hunger strikes ultimately ended with the abolishing of the cultivation of indigo, or as it was known then, the Tinkatia system. The landlords under the British government were made to sign an agreement that granted the farmers more control over what they wanted to grow on their lands, among others. It was during this movement when Gandhi was referred to as Bapu and Mahatma, or so goes the legend. As that was the story of India's first civil disobedience movement, Champaran Satyagraha, which completes 100 years on 2017. Now, this picture, as you see, it is a real picture taken from the internet. This is the civil disobedience movement. All the peoples of Champaran, the tenant farmers, they were gathered over there, and Gandhiji was about to be arrested. They started protesting against his arrest. This was the first incidence of civil disobedience movement by the people of India. Now we will come back to the original text. Okay, so let's start with the first paragraph itself. When I first visited Gandhi in 1942 at his ashram in Sevagram in central India, he said, I will tell you how it happened that I decided to urge the departure of the British. It was in 1917 he had gone to the December 1916 annual convention of the Indian National Congress Party in Lucknow. There were 2,301 delegates and many visitors. During the proceedings, Gandhi recounted a peasant coming up to me looking like any other peasant in India, poor and emaciated, and said, I am Rajkumar Shukla, I am from Champaran and I want you to come from my district. Now the narrator here is the author himself, John Fisher, and he over here says that how Gandhiji had told him that what was it that actually urged him to fight against the British. What was it actually urged him to fight against the British, to fight against their wrong system, to lead the freedom struggle of India. And he goes on narrating that when he was attending Indian National Congress Party's annual convention in 1916 in Lucknow, a man came and met him. A man who actually introduced himself to Gandhiji. He said that he was a poor farmer and he have come from Bihar, Champaran district, and he requested Gandhiji to accompany him back to his village because he needs Gandhiji's help in some business. Gandhi had never heard of the place. It was in the foothills of the towering Himalayas near the kingdom of Nepal. Under an ancient arrangement, the Champaran peasants were sharecroppers. So, Gandhi had never heard of this place called Champaran before. If you go to the map of Bihar, you will see that this place is actually in the foothills of the Himalayas and it's very close to Nepal. Okay, this place was having an age old practice that all the people of, mainly the farmers, the people who are involved in the agricultural system of this Champaran area, the Champaran district, were actually sharecroppers. Sharecroppers, in Bengali we call them bhag chashi. That is, they don't have their own land. They actually take the land of the zamindars and they cultivate that land to produce crops, and rather they are paid by these wealthy zamindars remuneration or fees or labor charges, whatever you can say. Okay, so these are mainly sharecroppers. It is not their own land. They are actually cultivating on someone else's land. Rajkumar Shukla was one of them. He was literate but resolute. This Rajkumar Shukla is the most eminent character of this entire event of the Champaran Satyagraha. See, over here I have posted a picture of Rajkumar Shukla. It was a note, it was a stamp that was issued by the government of India to pay tribute to the man behind the Champaran movement. This is Rajkumar Shukla. There are a number of stamps that were issued by the Department of Post of Government of India in paying tribute to the man behind this first civil disobedience movement of India. He had come to the Congress session to complain about the injustice of the landlord system in Bihar, and somebody had probably said, "Speak to Gandhi." Gandhi told Shukla he had an appointment in Kanpur and was also committed to go to other parts of India. So, this man, Rajkumar Shukla, he was the key person behind this entire Champaran thing. Okay, he had come to the people of National Congress Party to complain against the landlords of Champaran. The landlords were the actual owner of the lands, and these were all the sharecroppers. So they were the tyrannical landowners who used to torment this deprived sharecroppers. These sharecroppers actually lead a very petty life, very miserable life. They were not given their own rights. They did not have the right on the lands they were cultivating, and they lead a very poor and desolate life. So to complain against all of this, Rajkumar Shukla had reached to the National Congress office, where he was told by someone that you can go and meet Gandhiji and he is the one who can help you out in all this. So Rajkumar Shukla actually followed Gandhi to Lucknow, and he said all these things, and he said his intention that Gandhiji should come to Champaran and solve the problem of the sharecroppers. But Gandhiji turned him down on the first account, and he told Shukla that he was having some prior engagement in Kanpur, and he was also committed to go to other parts of India. That is why right now it is impossible for him to go to Champaran along with Shukla. So let's see what Shukla does. Shukla accompanied him everywhere. Then Gandhi returned to his ashram near Ahmedabad. Shukla followed him to the ashram. For weeks he never left Gandhi's side. So this man Shukla, he was extremely resolute, what we already had heard. So when Gandhi turned him down, definitely he was a busy man. He had some prior engagements. He was actually fighting for the entire country, and he could not go everywhere at the same time. Okay, so he had turned down Shukla for the time being, and Shukla kept following Gandhi everywhere he went. When Gandhi returned to to his ashram in Ahmedabad, Shukla followed him to the ashram. For weeks, he never left Gandhi's side. Fix a date, he begged, and he started begging Gandhiji that please, sir, please fix a date, and you have to come to our place. People of Champaran needs your help, otherwise we will die someday in the hand of these cruel landlords. Impressed by the sharecropper's tenacity and story, Gandhi said, I have to be in Calcutta on such and such a date. Come and meet me and take me from there. Months passed. Shukla was sitting on his haunches at the appointed spot in Calcutta when Gandhi arrived. He waited till Gandhi was free. Then the two of them boarded a train for the city of Patna in Bihar. So Gandhi was actually very pleased with the tenacity, with the resolution of this young sharecropper peasant. He said to Rajkumar Shukla that I will definitely come to you, but I have some prior engagements already. I have some meetings or certain things to attend to in Calcutta. You do one thing, you come to me to Calcutta, and from there we will leave for your place. So Shukla already reached Calcutta at the proper time, and he kept waiting for Gandhi to be free. When Gandhiji was free, both of them left for Patna by a train. There Shukla led him to the house of a lawyer named Rajendra Prasad, who later became the president of the Congress Party and of India. This is Dr. Rajendra Prasad, the President of India that we all know. And here I have given you one picture of Gandhiji at Champaran. He had just come out of the train, and he was following, talking to other men, and he was followed by other men who understood that Gandhi had come over there to help him out. So Rajkumar Shukla, he took Gandhiji first to where? He took him to a lawyer named Rajendra Prasad. This lawyer was later the president of Congress Party and the president of India itself. Rajendra Prasad was out of town, but the servants knew Shukla as a poor yeoman who pestered their master to help the indigo sharecropper. So they let him stay on the grounds with his companion Gandhi, whom they took to be another peasant. But Gandhi was not permitted to draw water from the well, lest some drops from his bucket pollute the entire source. How did they know that he was not an untouchable? As Gandhiji, he was always dhoti clad, and he was always wearing this very simple clothes. He was looking like a peasant. When Gandhi and Shukla arrived at Rajendra Prasad house, Rajendra Prasad was not there. He had gone out of town, and this man, Shukla and Gandhiji, was met by the servants who informed them that Rajendra Prasad was out of town. But they knew Shukla. Shukla was a poor farmer, someone, a yeoman. Yeoman means someone of the downcast, because these people were actually these farmers, and they were looked upon by the higher strata of the society. Why was Shukla known to the servants? Because often a time Shukla had turned up to the house of Rajendra Prasad in order to seek justice for these poor sharecroppers from the landlords. And they also mistook Gandhi as one of the poor sharecroppers, because he was always dhoti clad and simple dressed. And they did not allow both of these men to draw water from the well, because they thought both of them were untouchables. Now, this untouchability was something that also was fought by Gandhiji. You know that he was against this caste system, and he really fought well for the freedom of the lower strata, the lower caste of the society, and this evil of caste system that existed in Indian society was something that Gandhiji was always against it. Gandhi decided to go to Muzaffarpur, which was en route to Champaran, to obtain more complete information about conditions than Shukla was capable of imparting. He accordingly sent a telegram to Professor J.B. Kripalani of the Arts College in Muzaffarpur, whom he had seen at Tagore Shantiniketan School. The train arrived at midnight 15th April 1917. Kripalani was waiting at the station with a large body of students. Gandhi stayed there for 2 days in the home of Professor Malkani, a teacher in a government school. So, Gandhiji, while he waited for Rajendra Prasad, he decided to go first to Muzaffarpur. In Muzaffarpur, he knew a man called Professor J.B. Kripalani or Acharya Kripalani. See here, I have shown you one stamp that was published by or issued by the Government of Post and the Government of India, Department of Post, the Government of India, in honor of J.B. Kripalani, who was a professor at the College of Arts in Muzaffarpur, and Gandhi had met this man in Tagore Shantiniketan, that is Vishwabharati school in Shantiniketan. When the train arrived at 15th April 1917, Kripalani was already waiting for Gandhiji to arrive with a full body of students, a huge body of students. Okay. At Kripalani's house, Gandhi took shelter for 2 days and then stayed there for 2 days. Gandhi took shelter in Muzaffar for 2 days in the house of Professor Malkani, a teacher in government school. It was an extraordinary thing in those days, Gandhi commented, for a government professor to harbor a man like me. In smaller localities the Indians were afraid to show sympathy for advocates of home rule. The news of Gandhi's advent and of the nature of his mission spread quickly through Muzaffarpur and to Champaran. Gandhi said that it was very odd at that time to shelter people who were actually fighting for their motherland, and that is why somehow he could not stay at J.B. Kripalani's house, but he was rather sheltered in Professor Malkani, a teacher in the government school. In his home, Gandhi was sheltered. And people would actually find it very offensive or find it, creating a crime to harbor men who were actually fighting for their country, and that is why news spread like wildfire. People all over the area, all over Muzaffarpur and Champaran, came to know that Gandhi had arrived over there for some advent, that means for some mission that he wants to succeed in. Sharecroppers from Champaran began arriving on foot and by conveyance to see their champion. Muzaffarpur lawyers called on Gandhi to brief him. They frequently represented peasant groups in court. They told him about their cases and reported the size of their fee. Over here, I am giving you a picture of J.B. Kripalani with Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, and on the left hand side, you can see that Gandhiji is at Champaran. He is being followed by the lawyers of Muzaffarpur, who called on Gandhi to brief him about this problem of the sharecroppers in the hand of the landlords, and they also told him that these advocates, these lawyers, actually took a lot of fees. Their fees were a bit higher, and these poor peasants, they could not afford any good lawyer to speak on their side. Gandhi chided the lawyers for collecting big fees from the sharecroppers. He said, I have come to the conclusion that we should stop going to law courts. Taking such cases to the courts does little good. Where the peasants are so crushed and fear stricken, law courts are useless. The real relief for them is to be free from fear. So, Gandhiji, actually, if you know, I don't know whether you know or not, Gandhiji himself was an advocate. He was a lawyer. He had studied law and he was practicing already in South Africa before he returned to India to fight for India's freedom struggle. So Gandhiji chided the lawyers. Chided means he actually rebuked or he scolded the lawyers for collecting such big fees from the sharecroppers. He said that he had come to the conclusion that all these cases going up to the law courts is doing bad than good to the poor sharecroppers, because these people, they are being shaken and crushed by this law system, by the system of law, or this judiciary rather, which have actually taken away a lot of money from the sharecroppers, actually cringed up a lot of money from the sharecroppers rather than giving them any benefit at the end of the day. Here Gandhiji said that the most important thing that the people of India should do is to win over their fear. They should be free from their fear first. They should know how to fight back. They are so fear stricken that they have forgotten what to do and how to do. This thing should go first, and then they will definitely come to understand what to do and how to do, but they have to do away with fear first. Most of the arable land in Champaran district was divided into large estates owned by Englishmen and worked by Indian tenants. Arable lands means cultivable lands. These cultivable lands in Champaran districts were divided into large estates. These estates were actually ruled by the Englishmen, and the Indian tenants, the Indian farmers, used to work over there as laborers. The chief commercial crop was indigo. So, as I already told you before the start of the story, where we were dealing with the background of the story, the place, the Champaran area, it was famous for growing the indigo. Indigo is a kind of a cash crop or a commercial crop. There now, I don't know whether you know or not, there are two type of crops. One are called the food crops, the ones that is important for us, like the rice, the pulses, the wheat, the jowar, basra, the vegetables. These are all food crops. Why they are food crops? Because it is something that you can eat, that you can keep at your home for feeding your family. And cash crops or commercial crops are those which are grown with the intention of selling them for getting money. So instead of growing the food crops in Champaran, the Englishmen, the English landlords, were forcibly asking these men, the sharecroppers, to cultivate only indigo. The landlords compelled all tenants to plant 3/20 or 15% of their holdings with indigo and surrender the entire indigo harvest as rent. So the landlords, what they were doing, how they were torturing. Here we are shown how the torture of the indigo farmers actually led to the Champaran movement, how they were tortured. We all know that the Champaran Satyagraha or the civil disobedience movement started. We all know that the people were bothered, these sharecroppers were tortured by the landlords. But how they were tortured? They were tortured like that 15% of their holdings were meant for cultivating indigo, and these indigo were given back to the surrender back to the landlord as the rent. This entire indigo harvest was surrendered as rent to the landlords. This was done by a long time contract. Presently, the landlords learned that Germany had developed synthetic indigo. They thereupon obtained agreements from the sharecroppers to pay them compensation for being released from the 15% arrangement. The sharecropping arrangement was irksome to the peasants, and many signed willingly. Those who resisted engaged lawyers, the landlord hired thugs. Meanwhile, the information about synthetic indigo reached the illiterate peasants who had signed, and they wanted their money back. So, what they were doing? Actually, this Englishmen, they had come to know that Germany had already developed synthetic indigo. Synthetic indigo will actually, turn over this entire market of the natural indigo that was derived from the indigo plant. So, the people, this Englishmen, this English landlords, what did they do? They came into a contract with the sharecroppers of Champaran. What? That if they release from their duty, they have to pay 15% of their arrangement. The sharecropping arrangement was irksome to the peasant. That means it was actually very odd for the peasants, and they didn't. Many of them signed it willingly. Those who resisted and hired lawyers, Englishmen actually tortured them back by appointing thugs who came over there and tortured these poor sharecroppers. Meanwhile, this entire information about the synthetic indigo had already reached the poor peasants of Champaran, and now what they were doing? They were asking for their money back. At this point, Gandhi arrived in Champaran. He began by trying to get the facts. First, he visited the secretary of the British Landlords Association. The secretary told him that they could give no information to an outsider. Gandhi answered that he was no outsider. Okay. Gandhi took a strategy. He actually went to the secretary of the British Landlords Association, and he asked him asked this association regarding the proper information about what was going on in the name of indigo farming in Champaran, but he was answered that he was an outsider and they will reveal nothing to an outsider. Gandhi answered back by saying that he was not an outsider. This entire country, his own country, he is an Indian himself, and as an Indian, he had the full right to know what is going on with the people of his country. Here, see, I have given you some pictures from the indigo farming at Champaran. These were the farmers who were engaged by the, this British landlords to cultivate indigo. Here, you in the left hand side, you can see the people are harvesting this indigo plants, and the right hand side, they're actually engaged in a process of cultivation of this entire indigo farming. Okay. Next, Gandhi called on the British official commissioner of the Tirhut division, in which the Champaran district lay. The commissioner, Gandhi reports, proceeded to bully me and advised me forthwith to leave Tirhut. Gandhi did not leave. Instead, he proceeded to Motihari, the capital of Champaran. You remember over there in the first of the beginning of the entire chapter, while I was discussing this background of the story, I was telling about Motihari. This place is extremely important in regard to the Champaran Satyagraha because Gandhiji proceeded to Motihari and he waited there. Was the capital Motihari, the capital of Champaran. He waited there for the police to come and take him over. So, what did Gandhi do next? After speaking to the Association of the British Landlords, when he failed in convincing them and he failed to gather proper information, he talked to the British official commissioner of the Tirhut division in which Champaran district lay. The commissioner, Gandhi said, actually asked him and bullied him. Rather, not asked him, he bullied him. Rather, he tormented him. He throwed some bad words against him and said Gandhi to leave Tirhut forthwith. But Gandhi did not live. Instead, he proceeded to Motihari, the capital of Champaran. Several lawyers accompanied him. At the railway station, a vast multitude greeted Gandhi. He went to a house and, using it as headquarters, continued his investigations. A report came in that a peasant had been maltreated in a nearby village. Gandhi decided to go and see. The next morning, he started out on the back of an elephant. He had not proceeded far when the police superintendent's messenger overtook him and ordered him to return to his own carriage. Gandhi complied. The messenger drove Gandhi home, where he served him with an official notice to quit Champaran immediately. Gandhi signed a receipt for the notice and wrote on that he would disobey the order. In consequence, Gandhi received summons to appear in court the next day. All night, Gandhi remained awake. He telegraphed Rajendra Prasad to come from Bihar with influential friends. He sent instruction to the ashram. He wired a full report to the viceroy. Morning found the town of Motihari black with peasants. So, while he was at Motihari and he came to know about a poor farmer who was being maltreated or tortured by the British landlords, and Gandhi set out to meet this farmer. He was stopped at his way by the police who overtook him and showed him the order coming from the commissioner, where it was written to him that he should leave Champaran at the instance. Gandhi took the notice, signed on it, and on the back of it wrote that he is disobeying the entire order. In consequence, Gandhi received a summon from the court to appear in the next day. Gandhi took his own strategy. He called up all his connections. He had already telegrammed Rajendra Prasad to come to Bihar at the instance with influential friends, and he set out instructions to the ashram, his Sevagram ashram in Ahmedabad, and he wired a full report to the Viceroy of India. The next morning, when Gandhi was about to appear in the court, the people of Motihari gathered in thousands of numbers around the place of Motihari, and the entire entire place was seemed black white. There were countless number of people, and their heads looked like it was a sea of, an ocean of people standing over there, protecting Gandhi, standing by his side, protesting the act of his arrest, and protesting the entire phenomena where Gandhi was summoned by the court to appear in court in his procedure of this disobedience of the order of the commissioner. Guys, this is the last part, and actually this is a big story. Already I have completed half of the story. In my next video I will put up the other half of the story. I hope you have understood it. Definitely we'll have one doubt clearing session in the Zoom class, but before that I will post the other half of the story. Till the time, thank you and goodbye.